She holds his daughter's future in her hands, but he shattered her heart years ago. Selah's pen froze mid-signature as the custody file slid across her desk. Maxwell Hargrave, the name that had haunted 8 years of sleepless nights, the man who left her standing in white silk, heart shattered, guests staring. Now, his daughter's future hung in her professional hands. The irony burned like acid. Could she evaluate the fitness of the father who had deemed her unfit to be his wife? Her hands trembled as she opened 7-year-old Daphne Hargrave's file. The child's photograph revealed a serious little girl with dark curls and cautious eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. Rosalind Hargrave sought full custody, citing Maxwell's dangerous family connections and emotional instability. Each accusation pierced deeper than professional detachment should allow. The words blurred as memories crashed over her. 8 years ago, she'd stood before the mirror in her grandmother's vintage lace dress, pearl buttons catching morning light as Matilda adjusted her veil. 200 guests had filled St. Mark's Cathedral, white roses adorning every pew. The string quartet had played their song, the melody they'd danced to the night he proposed beneath the oak tree in Riverside Park. But Maxwell never came. His best friend Hugo had delivered a single note, his face pale with discomfort. "I'm sorry. You deserve better than what I can give you." No explanation, no goodbye, just hollow words that shattered 8 years of dreams in one devastating moment. Dr. Santiago Parra entered her office, his distinguished gray beard and warm brown eyes immediately focusing on the open file. "The Hargrave custody case needs our most experienced evaluator, Selah. High-profile family with significant community influence. The mother's allegations are serious, but we need objective assessment." He settled into the chair across from her mahogany desk, unaware that each word felt like glass against her composure. "The preliminary reports suggest complexity. Maxwell Hargrave owns a successful construction company, appears financially stable, but there are concerns about family history. His uncle Cedric has alleged connections to organized crime, though never convicted." Selah forced her voice to remain steady. "Timeline for evaluation? 6 weeks for comprehensive assessment, home visits, psychological evaluations, interviews with family members and references." Santiago's expression grew concerned. "Are you all right? You look pale." "Just tired. Long night reviewing cases." The lie came easily, professional walls slamming into place. She couldn't reveal that the man whose parental fitness she'd evaluate was the same man who'd destroyed her faith in love with a single unsigned note. After Santiago left, Selah sat alone with the file, afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. She'd built her career helping children caught in adult conflicts, channeling her own abandonment into purpose. The irony that Maxwell's daughter now needed her protection wasn't lost on her. The appointment was set for the next morning. In 18 hours, she'd face Maxwell Hargrave across her professional desk, armed with psychological training and legal authority instead of wedding dreams and trusting heart. The next morning arrived with unseasonable autumn rain. Selah had barely slept, alternating between fury and professional anxiety. Her reflection revealed dark circles beneath brown eyes that had once sparkled with wedding planning excitement. She chose her most severe black suit, armor against memories. At exactly 9 o'clock, her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Dr. Montrese, Mr. Hargrave is here. Send him in." The words emerged steadier than her racing pulse warranted. Maxwell Hargrave stepped into her office like a ghost made flesh. 8 years had transformed the lean young man into someone broader, more weathered, but unmistakably him. His dark hair showed silver at the temples, and new lines around those intense dark eyes spoke of hardships she'd never know. He wore a charcoal suit that emphasized his height and the powerful build from years of physical work. Their eyes met across 8 years of silence, and time fractured. She watched recognition dawn in his expression, followed by something that might have been relief or regret. "Selah." Her name on his lips carried weight of history and pain. "Dr. Montrese," she corrected coolly, gesturing to the chair. "Please sit, Mr. Hargrave. We have much to discuss regarding your daughter." He settled into the leather chair, his presence filling the office in ways that made her hyper-aware of every detail. The way his hands gripped the armrests, the careful control in his posture, the underlying tension that suggested this meeting affected him deeply. "Before we begin," Maxwell said, his voice rougher than she remembered, "I need you to know that I never intended—" "This meeting is about Daphne's welfare," Sela interrupted, opening the file with deliberate precision. "Your personal history is relevant only as it pertains to your fitness as a parent." The professional boundary felt like a shield, but Maxwell's slight nod carried acknowledgement of both her authority and the pain underlying her words. "Tell me about your relationship with Daphne," she began, pen poised over her notepad. Maxwell's demeanor softened completely. "Daphne is everything to me. She's brilliant, creative, sensitive, sometimes too sensitive for her own good. She loves to draw, creates elaborate stories about characters in her pictures. When she's with me, she laughs. Real laughter, not the careful politeness she shows her mother." Despite her professional detachment, Sela found herself genuinely interested. "Can you elaborate on that distinction?" "Rosalind expects perfection. Daphne's 7, but she's already learned to hide parts of herself to avoid criticism. With me, she can be messy, ask endless questions, build blanket forts. She needs space to be a child." Sela made careful notes, studying Maxwell's face as he spoke about his daughter. The fierce protectiveness in his expression was genuine, unmarked by the calculated performance she'd learned to recognize in manipulative parents. "Your ex-wife alleges that your family connections pose danger to Daphne's safety. How do you respond?" Maxwell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My uncle Cedric made choices I've spent years distancing myself from. I built my construction company from nothing, using legitimate business practices. Daphne has never been exposed to questionable activities, and I've taken every precaution to ensure she never will be." "Yet you maintain contact with your uncle." "Limited contact. Family obligations at holidays, nothing more. I've made clear that my daughter comes first, and anyone who threatens her safety will find themselves cut off permanently." Their eyes met again, and for a moment the professional facade cracked. She saw the man who'd once promised forever, who'd planned their honeymoon to Italy and talked about the children they'd have together. He saw the woman who'd believed those promises, who'd trusted him completely until trust became irrelevant. "Do you believe in commitment, Mr. Hargrave?" The question emerged before she could stop it, loaded with personal history. Maxwell's eyes flashed with something she couldn't identify: pain, regret, determination. "I believe in protecting what matters most, even when it costs everything." The words hung between them like a challenge, 8 years of questions compressed into a single loaded exchange. Neither could look away. Her phone rang, breaking the spell. Santiago's voice. "Sela, I need to discuss the Henderson case." "Of course, I'll be with you shortly." She ended the call and looked back at Maxwell, who was studying her with unsettling intensity. "We'll need additional sessions for comprehensive evaluation. My assistant will coordinate appointments." Maxwell stood, his height making the office feel smaller. "Sela, Dr. Montrese, I know this situation is complicated, but Daphne needs stability, and she needs her father. Whatever happened between us, please don't let it affect what's best for my daughter." The quiet desperation beneath his controlled words hit unexpectedly. "I'm a professional, Mr. Hargrave. My recommendations will be based solely on what serves Daphne's best interests. However, if you believe my involvement presents conflict of interest, you're welcome to request a different evaluator." Maxwell shook his head immediately. "No, you're the best at what you do. Daphne deserves the best evaluation possible, regardless of personal complications." After he left, Sela sat in her empty office, surrounded by the lingering presence of his cologne and the weight of professional responsibility. Through her window, rain continued falling on courthouse steps where she'd once imagined celebrating new beginnings. Now those same steps would witness her evaluation of the man who'd shattered those dreams. She'd been deemed unfit for his personal life, but now held authority over his parental future. Her hands shook as she closed his file, realizing that 8 years of careful healing had been undone in 57 minutes of professional consultation. Chapter 2. 1 week later, Sela found herself standing outside Maxwell's renovated townhouse in the historic Riverside district, professional clipboard in hand and emotions carefully locked away. The neighborhood spoke of success achieved through honest work. Tree-lined streets where children played safely, restored Victorian homes requiring both vision and substantial investment. Maxwell's house stood apart through obvious care rather than ostentation. The original 1890s architecture had been preserved while incorporating modern elements. A child's bicycle sat on the wraparound porch next to pots of autumn mums, domestic normalcy that contrasted with the dangerous family connections Rosalind's lawyers emphasized. Maxwell answered the door wearing jeans and a navy cotton shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. Casual clothes made him seem more approachable than the controlled man in her office, but they also reminded her of lazy Saturday mornings when they'd planned their life together over coffee and crosswords. "Thank you for coming," he said, stepping aside. "Daphne's at school, but I can show you her room, her play areas, everything she needs to feel secure here." The interior revealed the same thoughtful attention as the exterior. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath Persian rugs, while built-in bookshelves displayed literature and children's stories. Framed photographs showed Daphne at various ages, gap-toothed smiles, art projects, father-daughter adventures that spoke of genuine connection rather than performative parenting. "Your home is beautiful," Sela admitted, making notes about the safe, nurturing environment. "How long have you lived here?" 3 years. I bought it after the divorce, wanted Daphne to have stability when she stays with me." Maxwell led her through rooms that felt lived in rather than staged. "Took 2 years of renovation, but I wanted something that would last." Daphne's room was a 7-year-old's paradise, purple walls covered with her artwork, a reading nook with stuffed animals, a desk positioned near windows for natural light. Everything spoke of a father who understood his daughter's needs. "She loves to draw," Maxwell explained, touching one of the colorful pictures. "This one's her favorite. It's our house, but she added a tower where she can be a princess." Sela examined the drawing more closely. It showed 3 figures standing in front of the house, a tall man, a smaller girl, and curiously, a woman with dark hair who clearly wasn't Rosalind. "Who's the third person?" Maxwell's expression grew cautious. "She calls her the nice lady who helps Daddy smile. Children create imaginary figures sometimes, especially when processing family changes." They moved to his home office, a masculine space with leather furniture and walls lined with construction awards and business certifications. His desk held contracts, blueprints, financial documents suggesting thriving legitimate business operations. As Maxwell reached across the desk to retrieve a business portfolio, his sleeve brushed against her clipboard. The contact lasted barely a second, but electricity shot between them like lightning finding ground. Both froze, awareness crackling in the sudden silence. Sela stepped back quickly, professional boundaries reasserting themselves. "I should see the kitchen and common areas." The kitchen revealed further evidence of thoughtful parenting. A small step stool near the sink for Daphne to help with dishes, art supplies organized in clear containers, a bulletin board displaying school achievements. Maxwell clearly prioritized his daughter's involvement in daily life. "She helps me cook dinner when she's here," Maxwell explained, opening the refrigerator to show healthy food choices alongside kid-friendly options. "We're working on spaghetti and meatballs. She's very particular about seasoning." Despite her professional detachment, Sela found herself smiling at the image of serious little Daphne directing her father's cooking. The smile faded when she realized Maxwell was studying her expression with unsettling intensity. "You're different than you were," he said quietly. "More confident, stronger." People change in 8 years. Abandonment tends to accelerate personal growth. Maxwell's face tightened with what might have been regret. "Sela, we should continue the evaluation." She moved toward the living room, needing distance from whatever explanation he thought might bridge 8 years of silence. The living room continued the theme of comfortable elegance, leather furniture arranged for conversation, a fireplace with evidence of regular use, bookshelves including both adult literature and children's stories. French doors opened onto a back garden where a swing set and sandbox waited for spring weather. Sela was examining child-proofing measures when she heard the front door open and a child's voice calling, "Daddy, I forgot my art project." Daphne Hargrave appeared in the doorway, dark curls escaping braided pigtails and backpack sliding off her shoulder. She was smaller than her photograph suggested, with her father's dark eyes and an expression combining curiosity with wariness. "Sweetheart, we have a visitor," Maxwell said, his entire demeanor softening as he knelt to his daughter's eye level. "This is Dr. Montrese. She's here to learn about our family." Daphne studied Sela with the frank assessment children employed when evaluating adults. "Are you here because of Mama's lawyers? They asked me lots of questions about Daddy." "I'm here to understand what makes you happy and helps you feel safe. Would you like to show me your art project?" Daphne's face lit up with enthusiasm only children could muster for creative endeavors. She rummaged through her backpack and produced a construction paper collage covered with glued photographs, fabric scraps, and colorful drawings. "It's called My Family," Daphne announced proudly. "We're supposed to show who we love and who loves us back." The project revealed a child's honest perspective on her divided world. Photographs of Maxwell dominated, father and daughter at baseball games, building snowmen, reading bedtime stories. Rosalind appeared in a few formal portraits, but emotional warmth was absent. Most intriguingly, Daphne had drawn a woman with dark hair and kind eyes standing next to Maxwell in several pictures, the same mysterious figure from the bedroom artwork. "Can you tell me about the lady you drew?" Sela asked gently. Daphne looked at her father uncertainly. "She's someone who makes Daddy not sad anymore. When he thinks about her, he gets the same face he has when he looks at me, like love mixed with missing someone." Maxwell's expression grew pained. "Sweetheart, you need to get back to school before you're late." After Daphne left, silence settled over the living room like dust. Maxwell stood at the French doors, studying the empty garden as if it held answers to questions he couldn't voice. "She's perceptive," Sela finally said. "Too perceptive sometimes." Maxwell turned back to face her, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. "Children see things adults try to hide." "Who is the woman in her drawings?" Maxwell was quiet for so long that Sela wondered if he would answer. When he spoke, his voice carried weight of years. "Someone I lost, someone I think about more than I should." The admission hung between them, loaded with implications neither could acknowledge directly. Sela found herself studying Maxwell's face, searching for the man who'd promised forever and delivered abandonment instead. "I should finish my evaluation," she said finally. They completed the tour in professional silence, but awareness hummed between them like a live wire. When Maxwell reached around her to demonstrate the safety lock on the basement door, his chest brushed her shoulder and she caught the scent of his cologne, different from 8 years ago, but still unmistakably him. When she stumbled slightly on the basement stairs, his hand shot out to steady her waist. The contact sent warmth spreading through her professional composure, and for a moment they stood frozen on the narrow staircase, her body aware of his strength and proximity. "Careful," he murmured, his voice rough with something that had nothing to do with safety concerns. Sela looked up to find him watching her with an expression that made her forget about professional boundaries and custody. Evaluations. Time seemed suspended as years of separation collapsed into this moment of unwanted awareness. Her phone rang, shattering the spell. Santiago's number appeared on the screen. "I need to take this," she managed, stepping away from Maxwell's supportive touch. "Sela, how's the home evaluation proceeding?" Santiago's voice crackled through the speaker. "Nearly complete. I'll have the preliminary report on your desk by Friday." After ending the call, Sela found Maxwell watching her with unreadable expression. The moment of connection had passed, replaced by the weight of professional responsibility and personal history. "I believe I have what I need for today's evaluation," she announced, gathering her materials with deliberate efficiency. Maxwell walked her to the front door, their footsteps echoing in the sudden formality. On the porch, autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves and approaching winter. "Sela," Maxwell said as she reached her car, "whatever you remember about me, whatever I did that hurt you, please don't let it affect what's best for Daphne. She deserves a father who loves her, whatever my other failings might be." The quiet desperation in his voice made her turn back. I told you before, Mr. Hargrave, my recommendations are based solely on professional assessment. I know you hate me, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. You have every right to hate me, but Daphne is innocent in all of this. She needs stability, and she needs her father. Selah stood beside her car, keys in hand, studying the man who'd once been everything she'd wanted. I don't hate you, Maxwell. Hate requires caring, and I stopped caring about you a long time ago. The lie came easily, but Maxwell's expression suggested he recognized it as such. Something flickered in his dark eyes, hope, perhaps, or recognition that indifference was harder to maintain than anger. 8 years is a long time, he said quietly. People change, circumstances change. Sometimes what seems like betrayal is actually protection. Protection? The word emerged sharper than intended. Is that what you call abandoning someone at the altar without explanation? Maxwell stepped closer, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes and the silver threading his dark hair. Sometimes protecting someone you love means making choices that destroy your own happiness. Stop. Selah held up her hand, professional composure cracking despite her best efforts. Whatever justification you've created for what you did, I don't want to hear it. This is about Daphne, nothing else. She got into her car before he could respond, but not before seeing something that might have been regret flash across his features. As she drove away, Maxwell remained on his porch, watching until her car disappeared around the corner. That night, Selah sat in her apartment reviewing evaluation notes and trying to separate professional observations from personal reactions. Maxwell's home provided clear evidence of stable, nurturing environment. His interaction with Daphne revealed genuine parental bond. His business success demonstrated ability to provide financial security. By every objective measure, he was a fit parent. The problem was objectivity. Chapter 3. 2 weeks into the evaluation process, Selah discovered that maintaining professional objectivity around Maxwell Hargrave required constant vigilance. Each session revealed more evidence of his genuine fitness as a parent, while simultaneously undermining her carefully constructed emotional defenses. The Tuesday appointment had been scheduled to review Daphne's psychological assessment results. Maxwell arrived precisely on time, wearing a navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and carried himself with quiet confidence she remembered from their college years. Daphne scored exceptionally well on emotional intelligence measures, Selah reported, consulting her notes while hyper-aware of Maxwell's presence. She demonstrates strong coping skills for a child from a divorced family, suggesting consistent emotional support from at least one parent. Maxwell's face softened with obvious pride. She's remarkable. Sometimes I think she understands adult complexities better than adults do. However, there are concerning responses. When asked about her ideal family situation, she consistently draws or describes 3 people rather than traditional nuclear family with her mother. The mysterious woman again? More than that. She's incorporating this figure into daily narratives. Yesterday, she told her teacher that Daddy's special friend would help him not be lonely anymore. It suggests she's creating emotional solutions to what she perceives as her father's unhappiness. Maxwell shifted uncomfortably. Children have active imaginations. They do. But this pattern suggests Daphne believes her father needs something he doesn't currently have. She's trying to fix adult problems through fantasy, which indicates emotional burden inappropriate for her age. Selah watched Maxwell process this information, noting how his jaw tightened with guilt rather than defensive anger. A manipulative parent would have dismissed concerns or blamed the other parent. Maxwell seemed to be taking responsibility for his daughter's emotional intuition. "What do you recommend?" he asked finally. "Honesty appropriate to her developmental level. If you're struggling with loneliness or loss, Daphne already senses it. Acknowledging difficult emotions while reassuring her that adult feelings aren't her responsibility to fix." Their eyes met across the desk, and Selah realized they were no longer discussing generic parenting advice. They were talking about the specific loss that had shaped Maxwell's life, the same loss that had devastated hers. The moment stretched between them, loaded with 8 years of unspoken truths, until Maxwell's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened immediately. "I'm sorry, I need to take this." Without waiting for permission, he answered, "What do you want, Cedric?" Even from across the desk, Sela could hear the gravelly voice. "Family dinner Sunday. Your presence is expected." "I told you, Daphne and I won't be attending family gatherings until you clean up your business practices." Interesting position for someone who built his company using family seed money. Maxwell's knuckles whitened as he gripped the phone. "That debt was paid years ago, with interest. I don't owe you anything." "Everyone owes family loyalty, nephew, especially those with custody battles pending. Wouldn't want any unfortunate revelations to complicate your situation." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sela watched Maxwell's face transform from frustrated family member to protective father willing to go to war for his child's safety. "Stay away from my daughter and stay out of my business, Cedric." Maxwell ended the call and sat in heavy silence, family dysfunction filling Sela's professional office. She documented everything: the threat, Maxwell's protective response, clear indication he was actively distancing himself from questionable family influences. "How often does your uncle contact you?" she asked, returning to professional evaluation mode. "Monthly, usually around holidays or family obligations. He believes blood should supersede personal choice." Maxwell's voice carried years of frustration. "I've made it clear that Daphne's safety comes before family loyalty, but Cedric doesn't accept boundaries well." "Has he ever threatened you directly regarding custody?" Maxwell hesitated, weighing how much truth might help or harm his case. He suggested that family unity might be beneficial during legal proceedings. "I've made it equally clear that anyone who threatens my daughter's well-being will find themselves permanently cut off." Sela made careful notes, recognizing both the threat Cedric represented and Maxwell's consistent priority of protecting his child. The conversation revealed a man caught between family obligations and paternal responsibility, choosing his daughter's welfare over potentially powerful family connections. "Your uncle's call was recorded. Court policy requires documentation of interactions that might affect custody decisions." "Good. Let the judge hear exactly what I'm dealing with." The fierce protectiveness in Maxwell's voice stirred something she didn't want to acknowledge. The man who'd abandoned her had clearly learned to fight for what mattered most to him now. 2 days later, Sela received an unexpected visitor. The woman who entered was striking in the way that money and genetics combined to create. Blonde, elegant, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Rosalind Hargrave possessed the kind of refined beauty that graced society pages and charity galas, but her smile never reached her. Calculating blue eyes. "Dr. Montrese, I'm Rosalind Hargrave, Daphne's mother. I was hoping we could have a conversation about my daughter's welfare." Sela's professional instincts immediately went on alert. Parents attempting to influence custody evaluators outside scheduled appointments typically had agendas that didn't align with their children's best interests. "Mrs. Hargrave, I can't discuss ongoing evaluations with either parent outside formal sessions. If you'd like to schedule an appointment—" "Oh, this isn't about the evaluation," Rosalind interrupted, settling into the chair without invitation. "This is about my ex-husband's history with you." The words hit Sela like cold water. She kept her expression neutral through years of professional training, but her pulse accelerated dangerously. "I'm not sure what you mean." Rosalind's smile turned predatory. "Maxwell Hargrave left you at the altar 8 years ago. Quite the scandal in social circles, the promising young architect abandoning his fiancée on their wedding day. I did my research when we started dating. I always investigate potential partners thoroughly." Sela's mouth felt dry, but she maintained professional composure. "Even if that were relevant, it wouldn't affect my professional assessment of Daphne's needs." "Wouldn't it? A woman scorned suddenly holds power over her former fiancé's parental rights? The conflict of interest seems obvious." Rosalind leaned forward with mock concern. "I'm sure you believe you can be objective, but human nature suggests otherwise." "Are you questioning my professional integrity, Mrs. Hargrave?" "I'm concerned about my daughter's welfare. If her father's fitness is being evaluated by someone with personal history, shouldn't that be disclosed to the court?" The threat was elegantly delivered, but unmistakable. Rosalind had discovered their connection and was prepared to use it as a weapon if Sela's evaluation didn't favor her custody petition. After Rosalind left, Sela sat in her empty office, feeling like walls were closing in. The custody evaluation had become something far more complex than professional duty. It was now a battlefield where her past, Maxwell's future, and a child's welfare intersected dangerously. The decision was taken from her the next morning when Maxwell appeared without appointment, his face grim with determination and barely controlled fury. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, closing the door despite her assistant's protests. "Mr. Hargrave, I can't see you without— Rosalind visited you yesterday. She's threatened to expose our history unless you recommend against my custody petition." Selah's professional mask slipped. "How do you know about her visit?" "Because I know my ex-wife. She's ruthless when she wants something, and she wants full custody for reasons that have nothing to do with Daphne's welfare." Maxwell moved closer to her desk, his presence filling the office with urgency. "She's trying to manipulate you the same way she manipulates everyone else. Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that our personal history creates a conflict of interest. Does it? Or does it give you insight into who I really am?" Maxwell's dark eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. "You knew me before I learned to hide behind professional success and careful words. You knew the man who wanted to build something lasting, who believed in forever." The past tense hit her like a physical blow. That man abandoned his fiancée on their wedding day without explanation. That man proved he didn't believe in forever when it mattered most. That man made the hardest choice of his life to protect the woman he loved more than his own happiness. Maxwell's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "And he's regretted it every day since." Selah stood abruptly, moving to the window to put distance between them. Outside, courthouse steps bustled with lawyers and families navigating legal complexities, but inside her office, the air had become too thick to breathe. "Stop," she said without turning around. "Whatever explanation you think might justify what you did, I don't want to hear it. It's 8 years too late." "What if it isn't about apologies?" Maxwell moved behind her close enough that she could feel his warmth without touching. "What if it's about truth?" Against her better judgment, Selah turned to face him. The vulnerability in his expression reminded her of the young man who'd proposed beneath their oak tree, who'd planned their future with the same intensity he now brought to protecting his daughter. "The truth is that you left me standing in a wedding dress in front of 200 people without the courtesy of a real explanation. The truth is that you made me question everything I believed about love, commitment, and my own worth." Maxwell's face tightened with pain. "You're right. I handled it wrong, caused damage I can never repair. But the choice wasn't between loving you and leaving you. It was between putting you in danger and keeping you safe." "Danger from what?" "From my family. From Cedric specifically." Maxwell ran his hands through his hair, careful control cracking. 3 days before our wedding, he made it clear that my marriage to you would be problematic for family business. He had photographs, Selah. Pictures of you leaving work, grocery shopping, visiting your parents, detailed knowledge of your daily routines. Ice water seemed to flood Selah's veins. "You're saying your uncle threatened me?" "He didn't threaten, he promised. Said that unfortunate accidents happened to people who got too close to family members who didn't understand loyalty. Said you seemed like such a lovely girl. It would be tragic if something happened to you because of my poor judgment." The office seemed to spin around her. 8 years of believing herself unworthy of explanation, unworthy of love, and it had all been about protection rather than rejection. "So you just decided for me? Decided I'd rather be abandoned than trusted with the truth? I decided I'd rather live with you hating me than live with your blood on my hands." Maxwell's voice broke slightly. "I was 26, terrified and convinced that leaving you was the only way to keep you alive." Selah sank into her chair, the weight of revelation making her legs unsteady. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have faced it together." "What solution? Go to police with vague threats from a man who'd never been successfully prosecuted? Disappear together and spend our lives looking over our shoulders? Ask you to give up your career, your family, your entire life because of my family's sins?" Each question hit with logical precision, but 8 years of pain couldn't be reasoned away with retroactive justification. "You should have trusted me enough to make my own choice about the risk." "You're right," Maxwell said simply. "I should have, but I was young and scared and convinced that love meant protecting you from everything, including the truth. I thought I was being noble. I realize now I was being cowardly." They sat in heavy silence, 8 years of misunderstanding hanging between them like smoke from a fire, finally being extinguished. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Daphne needs her father, and you're the only person with authority to ensure she gets that chance. Because Rosalind is using our history as a weapon, and you deserve to know why that history exists." Maxwell paused, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. "And because I've spent 8 years wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to trust you with the truth." Before Sela could respond, her office door opened and Santiago entered, stopping short when he saw Maxwell. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had an appointment," Santiago said, though his expression suggested curiosity about the obvious tension. "Mr. Hargrave was just leaving," Sela managed. Maxwell stood, his height making the office feel smaller. "Think about what I said, Sela. Not about us, we're part of the past, but about Daphne. She deserves a father who would sacrifice everything to protect the people he loves." That evening, Sela sat in her apartment staring at a glass of wine she couldn't bring herself to drink, Maxwell's revelations replaying in her mind. 8 years of believing herself abandoned, unworthy, disposable, and the truth was that she'd been loved enough to sacrifice everything for her safety. The irony was devastating. Maxwell's protection had saved her from physical danger but destroyed her emotionally. His silence had kept her alive but made her question her worth. As she prepared for bed, Sela caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror and saw the same woman who'd looked back 8 years ago. Older, more professionally successful, but still carrying the same fundamental question. What would she have? Chosen if Maxwell had trusted her with the truth? The answer terrified her because, despite 8 years of anger and professional achievement, she suspected she would have chosen him. Chosen love over safety, partnership over protection, truth over comfortable lies. Chapter 4. The following week brought a development that shattered any illusion of professional normalcy. Victoria Sterling, Maxwell's attorney, had requested a meeting to discuss case strategy. The elegant blonde entered Sela's office with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention, her sharp intelligence evident in green eyes and commanding presence. "Dr. Montrese, thank you for seeing me. I represent Maxwell in his custody matter." Victoria's handshake was firm, professional, though something in her smile suggested she knew more than she was revealing. "How can I help you, Counselor Sterling?" I wanted to provide context about Maxwell's family situation that might not be apparent from formal documents. His uncle Cedric represents everything Maxwell has worked to distance himself from: threats, inappropriate business practices, complete disregard for anyone who doesn't serve his purposes. Victoria leaned forward slightly. "I've represented many fathers in custody disputes. Most are fighting for visitation rights or trying to minimize child support. Maxwell is fighting for the privilege of providing stability and emotional security to his daughter. He's already proven he'll sacrifice everything that matters to him to protect someone he loves." The last sentence carried subtle emphasis, and Sela realized Victoria knew about their history. The attorney was speaking in code, acknowledging Maxwell's pattern of protective sacrifice without directly referencing their personal connection. "Are you concerned about Mrs. Hargrave's fitness as a parent?" "I'm concerned about her motivations. Rosalind's trust fund has restrictions that lift if she maintains primary custody. She also has a relationship with someone who views Daphne as inconvenient complication rather than beloved stepdaughter. This information was new and potentially significant. Can you substantiate these claims? Financial records are part of discovery. The boyfriend situation is harder to document, but Daphne has mentioned feeling unwelcome in her mother's home when Uncle Richard is visiting. Children are remarkably honest about emotional atmospheres adults try to hide." Victoria stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Dr. Montrese, I don't know what personal history exists between you and my client, but I do know that Maxwell Hargrave would walk through fire for people he cares about. Sometimes that means making decisions that look wrong to everyone else, but come from the deepest kind of love." After Victoria left, Sela pondered the attorney's words. The woman had clearly been sending a message that Maxwell's history of protective sacrifice extended beyond romantic relationships to encompass anyone he considered family. Her contemplation was interrupted by unexpected commotion in the hallway. Raised voices, her assistant's firm tone insisting someone couldn't enter without appointment, and underneath it all, a gravelly voice that made her blood run cold. The office door opened despite protests, and Cedric Hargrave stepped into her professional sanctuary like a predator entering occupied territory. He was older than she'd expected, probably in his early 60s, with silver hair and expensive suit that couldn't quite disguise the calculating coldness in his pale eyes. Everything about him suggested wealth and power, but underneath lay something that made survival instincts whisper danger. "Dr. Montress, forgive the intrusion. I'm Cedric Hargrave, Maxwell's uncle. I believe you're conducting evaluation of my great-niece's living situation." Selah's professional training kicked in despite alarm bells. "Mr. Hargrave, I can't discuss ongoing evaluations with extended family members. If you have concerns, you need to contact the court directly." Cedric's smile was cold as winter wind. "Oh, I'm not here about the evaluation. I'm here about you." The words dropped into the office like stones into still water, creating ripples of threat that made the air suddenly hard to breathe. Selah kept her expression neutral, but her hand moved instinctively toward the panic button beneath her desk. "I'm not sure what you mean." 8 years ago you were engaged to my nephew. Lovely ceremony planned, I'm sure. Unfortunate that he developed cold feet at the last moment." Cedric moved closer with predatory grace. "These things happen in young relationships. People realize they want different things." "That's ancient history, Mr. Hargrave." "Is it? Because it seems to me that ancient history has a way of influencing present decisions. A woman scorned might find it difficult to be objective about her former fiancé's parental fitness." The threat was subtly delivered but unmistakable. Cedric was laying groundwork to challenge her professional integrity if the evaluation didn't serve his family's interests. "My professional recommendations are based solely on what serves the child's best interests," Selah said firmly. "I'm sure you believe that, but human nature suggests otherwise." Cedric's tone carried mock concern. "It would be unfortunate if questions about your objectivity complicated this situation unnecessarily." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Hargrave?" "Threatening? Dr. Montress, I'm simply expressing concern about potential conflicts of interest. The legal system depends on impartial evaluation. If there were suggestions that personal bias might affect professional judgment, well, that could create complications for everyone involved." Cedric moved toward the door, but paused with his hand on the handle. "Maxwell made certain choices 8 years ago that served everyone's best interests. I trust you'll make similarly wise choices now." After he left, Selah sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the kind of subtle intimidation Maxwell had tried to protect her from. Cedric hadn't made direct threats, but his message was clear. Step out of line, and he would destroy her professional reputation through whispers about bias and conflict of interest. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone to call courthouse security, then stopped. What could she report? That a man had visited to express concern about professional objectivity? That she'd felt threatened by someone who hadn't actually threatened her? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Beautiful office, lovely view of the courthouse steps. Would hate for anything to interfere with such a promising career." The message was followed by a photograph taken through her office window, showing her at her desk moments before. Someone had been watching, photographing, documenting her movements. This was exactly what Maxwell had tried to protect her from 8 years ago. The slow, systematic intimidation that made victims question their own safety without providing legal recourse. Her office door burst open again, but this time it was Maxwell, his face dark with fury and something that looked like panic. "Did he hurt you?" Maxwell's voice was rough with barely controlled emotion as he scanned her office for signs of struggle. "How did you know he was here?" "My construction site is across the street. I saw him enter the courthouse." Maxwell moved to the window, checking the street below with systematic attention. "What did he say?" Selah showed him the text message, watching his expression grow increasingly grim as he read the words and examined the photograph. "This ends now," Maxwell said, his voice carrying quiet finality. "I won't let him terrorize you the way he terrorized me 8 years ago." "What are you going to do?" Maxwell looked at her with an expression that combined regret, determination, and something that might have been love. What I should have done 8 years ago. Trust you enough to fight beside me instead of trying to protect you by pushing you away. That evening found Sela in Maxwell's kitchen for what was supposed to be a standard home visit, but had transformed into something far more complex. The courthouse photographer had shaken both of them, creating urgency that transcended professional boundaries. Maxwell insisted on cooking dinner, partly to demonstrate domestic capabilities for evaluation purposes, but mostly because having something to do with his hands helped him think through Cedric's escalating threats. Daphne loves helping with the garlic bread, Maxwell explained, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator while Sela sat at the kitchen island, trying to maintain professional objectivity. She's very particular about the butter-to-herb ratio. Where is she tonight? Sleepover at her friend Emma's house. I wanted her away from here until we figure out how to handle Cedric's pressure campaign. Maxwell's hands stilled on the cutting board. I won't have her exposed to the kind of intimidation tactics my family employs. The kitchen felt different in evening light, warmer, more intimate than during her formal evaluation visit. Maxwell moved with easy competence, seasoning pasta sauce while maintaining conversation that felt dangerously close to domestic normalcy. You've become quite the cook, Sela observed, accepting a glass of wine and trying to ignore how right it felt to be in his kitchen, sharing ordinary moments that once would have been their daily routine. Necessity. Daphne deserves home-cooked meals, and I refuse to rely on takeout for basic parenting responsibilities. Maxwell glanced at her over his shoulder. Remember how we used to plan elaborate dinner parties? You'd research recipes for weeks. I'd design place settings like architectural blueprints. The memory hit unexpectedly, bringing warmth that had nothing to do with wine. You were obsessed with symmetrical table arrangements. I used to move one fork just to watch you carefully put it back in perfect alignment. Maxwell's smile was soft with nostalgia. You thought my precision was amusing. I thought your spontaneity would balance my need for control. Past tense? I don't know what tense we're in anymore. Maxwell turned to face her fully, something vulnerable in his expression. 8 years ago, I thought I was protecting you by making decisions alone. Today I realize I was just too scared to trust that love could survive ugly truths. The admission hung between them like a bridge across years of misunderstanding. Sela set down her wine glass, hyper-aware that they were venturing into territory that had nothing to do with custody evaluations. Maxwell, I know this complicates everything, your career, the evaluation, your carefully rebuilt life. But I can't pretend anymore that seeing you doesn't affect me, that being in the same room doesn't make me remember why I thought forever was possible. Before she could respond, he moved closer, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes and smell the cologne that was different from 8 years ago, but still somehow essentially him. I've spent 8 years wondering what would have happened if I'd trusted you with the truth, if I'd asked you to face the danger with me instead of trying to protect you from it. And now? Now I'm asking, not about the past, we can't change what happened, but about right now, this moment, with all its complications and professional risks and family dangers. Maxwell's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm asking if you think love can survive truth this time. The question demanded an answer she wasn't prepared to give. Professional ethics warred with personal longing. 8 years of careful healing competed with the undeniable pull she still felt toward the man who'd shaped her, understanding of both love and loss. Her phone rang before she could respond, Santiago's name appearing on the screen like cold water on building fire. I should take this, she managed, stepping back from Maxwell's overwhelming presence. Sela, I've been reviewing the Hargrave case files. Santiago's voice carried unusual tension. There are complications we need to discuss immediately. Someone is trying to manipulate the evaluation process. Can you come to the office tonight? After ending the call, Sela looked at Maxwell with mixture of regret and relief. The moment had been interrupted before she could make choices that might destroy everything she'd worked to build. Professional duty calls, she said, gathering her purse with hands that trembled slightly. Maxwell nodded, but something disappointed flickered in his expression. Will I see you again? For the evaluation, I mean. The assessment isn't complete. We still need final interviews, documentation review. She paused at the kitchen doorway, aware that every professional interaction was becoming increasingly personal. This is complicated, Maxwell. More complicated than either of us anticipated. Complicated doesn't mean impossible. The words followed her into the October night, where autumn air carried promise of winter and change. As she drove toward the courthouse, Sela tried to separate professional obligation from personal desire, but the lines had blurred beyond recognition. Have you ever had to choose between love and everything you've worked for? When the stakes are this high, how do you decide what matters most? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 5. Santiago was waiting in his office, case files spread across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. His expression was grim, and she realized that whatever complications he'd discovered were serious enough to warrant emergency consultation. Sit down, Sela. We have a problem. She settled into the familiar chair, noting how different Santiago's office felt at night. Shadows deeper, atmosphere more ominous. Someone has been making inquiries about your background, specifically your romantic history 8 years ago. Santiago's voice carried professional concern mixed with personal worry. Private investigator, very thorough, very expensive. The kind of resources that suggest serious money and serious intent. What kind of inquiries? Wedding vendors, former colleagues from your graduate program, anyone who might have knowledge of your relationship with Maxwell Hargrave. Santiago leaned forward, his expression grave. Sela, someone is building a case to challenge your professional integrity based on alleged bias. This goes far beyond normal custody proceedings. The room seemed to spin around her. Do we know who's behind the investigation? The investigator was paid through a shell company, but the sophistication suggests someone with significant resources and legal knowledge. Someone who understands exactly how to undermine professional credibility through whispers rather than direct accusations. Sela thought of Cedric's subtle threats, Rosalind's calculated visit, the photograph taken through her office window. The campaign against her was more coordinated than she'd realized. What do you recommend? Santiago was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with paternal concern. Officially, I recommend you recuse yourself from the case immediately. The appearance of impropriety alone could damage your career permanently. And unofficially? Unofficially, I think someone very dangerous is trying to manipulate this custody case, and removing you might leave a vulnerable child without proper protection. Santiago's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The question is whether you're willing to risk everything you've built to do what's right for Daphne Hargrave. The weight of decision settled over her like a heavy blanket. 8 years ago, Maxwell had chosen her safety over their love. Now she faced a similar choice. Professional security over a child's welfare, personal protection over doing what was right. If I continue the evaluation, they'll destroy my reputation. Probably. But if you recuse yourself, Daphne might end up with a parent who views her as a financial asset rather than beloved daughter. Sometimes protecting the innocent requires sacrificing our own comfort. The irony wasn't lost on her. Santiago was asking her to make the same kind of protective sacrifice Maxwell had made 8 years ago, except this time the protected innocent was Maxwell's daughter. That night, Sela sat in her apartment reviewing everything she knew about the Hargrave family dynamics. Professional files spread across her coffee table told the story of a 7-year-old girl caught between warring adults, each claiming to act in her best interests. Maxwell's evaluation revealed genuine parental love, stable home environment, financial security, and consistent prioritization of his daughter's needs over his own convenience. His only liability was family history he'd spent years trying to escape. Rosalind's evaluation showed emotional distance, financial motivations for custody, and living situation complicated by a boyfriend who viewed Daphne as an obstacle rather than family member. By every objective measure, Maxwell provided the better environment for raising a healthy, happy child. But objectivity had been compromised the moment she discovered the case involved the man who'd broken her heart to save her life. Every professional decision was now shadowed by personal history, every recommendation weighted with romantic baggage that had nothing to do with child welfare. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Beautiful evening for decision-making. Hope you choose wisely." The message was followed by another photograph, this one showing her leaving Maxwell's house earlier that evening. Someone was still watching, still documenting, still building a case against her professional integrity. Salah stared at the photograph, recognizing the moment when everything changed. She could recuse herself, protect her career, and leave Daphne's fate to someone without personal investment in the outcome. Or she could continue the evaluation, risk professional destruction, and fight for what she believed was right. The choice felt familiar. 8 years ago, Maxwell had faced a similar decision between love and safety, between personal desire and protecting someone else. He'd chosen sacrifice, believing it was noble. Now she understood why he'd felt trapped, why protection had seemed more important than partnership, why fear had overcome trust. But she also understood that some battles were worth fighting, some children were worth protecting, and some truths were worth telling regardless of personal cost. For the first time in 8 years, she knew exactly what Maxwell had been feeling when he left her at the altar. The difference was that this time, she was going to choose love over fear. Not romantic love, but the love that protected children and fought for justice, even when the cost was everything she'd worked to build. Her decision was made. Tomorrow she would continue Maxwell's evaluation, complete her professional assessment, and recommend what was best for Daphne regardless of what it cost her personally. The next morning brought news that shattered any remaining illusion of privacy. Salah arrived at her office to find Santiago waiting with a grim expression and newspaper folded to the society page. "You need to see this," he said without preamble. The headline made her blood run cold. "Custody Evaluator's Hidden Bias. Romance Gone Wrong Affects Child Welfare Case." Below it was a photograph from 8 years ago. Sela in her wedding dress, standing alone in the cathedral as guests whispered and photographers captured her humiliation. The article was masterfully written to destroy professional credibility without technically crossing legal lines. It suggested conflict of interest, questioned professional ethics, and painted her as a woman scorned seeking revenge through custody recommendations. "They've done their homework," Santiago said quietly. "Whoever orchestrated this knew exactly how to damage your reputation while staying just within legal boundaries." Through her office window, Sela could see news vans gathering on courthouse steps, reporters preparing to turn a child custody case into public spectacle. Somewhere in the city, Daphne Hargrave was getting ready for school, unaware that her future was being decided by adults playing sophisticated games of manipulation and intimidation. "Santiago, I need to ask you something. If you remove me from this case, who will replace me?" "Dr. Patricia Hammond. She's experienced, respected, thorough. She's also married to Judge Morrison's golf partner and moves in the same social circles as the Hargrave family. She'll see old money and social connections, not a 7-year-old girl who needs her father." Santiago's expression grew troubled. "Selah, you can't seriously be considering continuing this evaluation after today's revelation. My professional reputation was built on protecting children from adults who use them as pawns in power games. If I abandon Daphne now because someone decided to weaponize my personal history, what does that say about everything I've claimed to stand for?" Her phone rang with a call from an unknown number. The voice was gravelly, familiar, and filled with cold satisfaction. "Good morning, Dr. Montrese. I trust you've seen today's paper." "What do you want, Cedric?" "I want my great niece to have a stable home environment with her mother, away from the complications that seem to follow my nephew wherever he goes. Today's revelation makes clear that you're not the right person to make that determination. Because I was engaged to Maxwell 8 years ago? Because you're emotionally compromised, professionally biased, and now publicly humiliated. Continuing this evaluation would be career suicide." Cedric's tone carried mock concern. "I'm simply offering you the opportunity to step aside gracefully before things get more unpleasant." "And if I don't?" "Then tomorrow's paper might include information about your graduate school relationships, your financial struggles during doctoral program, perhaps some interesting details about why you really specialized in family psychology. Amazing what private investigators can discover when properly motivated." The threat was clear. withdraw from the case, or face complete personal destruction through selective revelation of private details taken out of context and twisted into weapons. After ending the call, Selah sat in heavy silence while Santiago studied her with a mixture of concern and professional calculation. "He's going to destroy you piece by piece until you quit," Santiago said finally. "This isn't just about custody anymore. It's about power, control, and eliminating anyone who threatens their interests." "Then let him try." Selah's voice carried determination that surprised them both. "I've built my career on protecting children from exactly this kind of manipulation. If I run now, I'm abandoning every principle I've claimed to believe in." "And if you stay?" "If I stay, I finish the evaluation, make my professional recommendation based on what's best for Daphne, and let the consequences fall where they may. Some things are worth fighting for, regardless of personal cost." Santiago nodded slowly, something like pride flickering in his expression. "Then we'd better prepare for battle, because Cedric Hargrave is about to discover what happens when he threatens someone under my professional protection." 2 hours later, Selah found herself in Judge Morrison's chambers, facing the man who would ultimately decide Daphne's fate. Maxwell sat with Victoria Sterling, his face tight with controlled fury and something that might have been guilt. Rosalind occupied the opposite side with her legal team, wearing an expression of righteous vindication that didn't quite hide her calculating satisfaction. "This is unprecedented," Judge Morrison began without preamble. "A custody evaluator's personal history becoming front-page news, allegations of professional bias, motions to dismiss and reassign. This case has become a circus when it should be focused on one thing: what's best for Daphne Hargrave." Rosalind's attorney leaned forward with practiced indignation. "Your Honor, Dr. Montrese's conflict of interest makes her evaluation worthless. She was abandoned at the altar by the father she's now evaluating. How can anyone expect objectivity?" "Because professional training supersedes personal experience," Selah responded before Santiago could speak. "My recommendation will be based solely on which environment best serves Daphne's developmental, emotional, and safety needs." Victoria Sterling rose with controlled elegance. "Your Honor, removing Dr. Montrese now would reward the very manipulation this case is supposed to protect Daphne from. Someone orchestrated this media campaign specifically to remove an evaluator who was uncovering inconvenient truths." "Are you suggesting a conspiracy?" Judge Morrison asked. "I'm suggesting that private investigators don't work for free and newspapers don't publish 8-year-old wedding photos without someone paying them to dig up dirt. The question is, who benefits from destroying Dr. Montrese's credibility?" Selah watched Maxwell during this exchange, noting how he kept his eyes fixed on his hands rather than looking at her. The guilt in his posture was obvious. He blamed himself for the situation, for the professional destruction that stemmed from their shared history. "Dr. Montrese," Judge Morrison addressed her directly, "given the circumstances, wouldn't it be prudent to recuse yourself?" The moment of truth had arrived. Selah could step aside, protect her career, and let someone else decide Daphne's future. Or she could fight for what she believed was right, regardless of personal cost. "Your Honor, I've spent 4 weeks evaluating this family. I understand the dynamics better than any replacement evaluator could in the remaining time frame." She paused, gathering courage. "More importantly, this case has taught me something about the nature of protection. 8 years ago, Maxwell Hargrave made a choice to protect me from his family's influence by removing himself from my life. He thought he was being noble, but he was actually being cowardly, making decisions for me instead of trusting me to make them myself." Maxwell's head snapped up, his eyes meeting hers across the chamber with something that might have been hope. "Today, I'm being asked to make the same kind of choice, to protect myself by abandoning a child who needs advocacy. But real protection isn't about running from difficult situations. It's about standing up to them, even when the personal cost is everything you've worked to build." The chamber fell silent except for the steady tick of the antique clock on Judge Morrison's desk. "Furthermore, my personal history with Maxwell Hargrave gives me unique insight into his character. I know how he responds under pressure, how he prioritizes the people he loves, how he makes difficult choices. That knowledge helps me evaluate his fitness as a parent." Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment. Dr. Montrice, are you prepared to face professional consequences if opposing counsel successfully argues that your personal involvement compromised your judgment? Your Honor, I'm prepared to stake my professional reputation on the integrity of my evaluation. If that's not enough, then perhaps the system values perception over protection. Very well. Dr. Montrice will complete her evaluation. Final report due in 1 week. Final hearing scheduled immediately afterward. As they filed out, Maxwell caught her arm in the hallway, his touch sending electricity through her professional composure. Selah, what you just did. What I just did was my job. She pulled away from his touch, hyper-aware that courthouse photographers might be lurking. Don't read more into it than professional responsibility. But Maxwell's expression suggested he recognized her choice for what it really was, not just professional duty, but personal courage. The same courage he'd failed to show 8 years ago when he'd chosen protection over partnership. Chapter 6. That afternoon, Selah sat in her office completing final interviews and documentation, knowing that each word she wrote was being scrutinized by people hoping to find evidence of bias. Her phone rang constantly with reporters seeking statements, colleagues offering support, and anonymous callers making threats that courthouse security took seriously enough to assign protective detail. Through it all, one question echoed in her mind. What would she tell 7-year-old Daphne if their positions were reversed? If a child asked why adults couldn't be brave enough to fight for what was right, what answer would justify abandonment disguised as protection? The answer came as she reviewed Daphne's psychological assessment one final time. The little girl had drawn picture after picture of the same 3-person family: herself, her father, and the mysterious woman who makes Daddy not sad anymore. Even at 7 years old, Daphne understood that love required courage, that families were built through choice rather than convenience. If a child could be that brave, surely an adult could find the strength to fight for what mattered most. The next few days passed in a blur of professional routine, shadowed by media attention and personal upheaval. Selah completed her evaluation despite constant scrutiny, focusing on Daphne's needs, rather than the chaos surrounding the case. On Thursday evening, she received an unexpected call from Maxwell. Selah, I need to see you. Not about the evaluation, about us, about what happened 8 years ago and what's happening now. His voice carried urgency that made her pulse accelerate. Maxwell, with everything that's going on, it's not appropriate. Please, just one conversation. After that, if you want me to stay away until after the hearing, I will. Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him at a small cafe near the courthouse, public enough to avoid impropriety, private enough for honest conversation. Maxwell was waiting when she arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more like the man she'd once loved. He stood when she entered, his dark eyes holding mixture of hope and desperation. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat across from him. "I know this is complicated, but I needed to tell you something before the hearing." Selah accepted the coffee he'd ordered for her, still remembered how she liked it after all these years. "What is it?" "I've been watching you this week, seeing how you've handled the media attention, the professional threats, the personal attacks. You've shown more courage in 7 days than I showed in 8 years. She started to protest, but he held up his hand. "Let me finish. 8 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Not just leaving you at the altar. That was the symptom. The mistake was not trusting you enough to face danger together. I was so afraid of losing you that I guaranteed I would lose you." Maxwell leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "This week, watching you risk everything for Daphne, I realized something. Love isn't about protecting people from hard choices. It's about trusting them to make those choices alongside you." Selah felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Maxwell, I know it's too late for us. I know I destroyed something that can't be rebuilt, but I needed you to know that what you're doing for Daphne, the courage you're showing, it's everything I should have been 8 years ago." The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his expression, the weight of regret and respect combined to shatter her defenses completely. "It's not too late," she whispered. Maxwell's eyes widened with something that looked like disbelief mixed with desperate hope. What? It's not too late. We're not the same people we were 8 years ago. Maybe that's what we needed. Time to become people brave enough for the truth. The cafe seemed to fade around them as they looked at each other across 8 years of separation and misunderstanding. This time, when Maxwell reached across the table to take her hand, she didn't pull away. Sela, are you saying... I'm saying that some love is worth fighting for, even when the timing is terrible and the circumstances are impossible. She turned her hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. I'm saying that maybe we've both learned enough about courage to try again. Maxwell's smile was radiant with possibility and relief. After the hearing, after all of this is settled and Daphne is safe, then we can figure out what comes next? After the hearing, she agreed, though her heart was already racing ahead to imagine what next might look like. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands linked across the small table, both understanding that they'd just made a choice that would change everything. I should go, Sela said finally. The hearing is tomorrow, and I need to be prepared. I know, but Sela, Maxwell squeezed her hand gently. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the judge decides about custody, thank you. For fighting for Daphne, for showing me what real courage looks like, for giving us another chance. As she walked back to her apartment that night, Sela felt something she hadn't experienced in 8 years, the flutter of new beginning mixed with the solid foundation of mature love. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight she allowed herself to believe that some stories did get second chances. The morning of the custody hearing arrived with crisp November air and determination that felt unshakable. Sela stood outside the courthouse clutching her final evaluation report, surrounded by news crews but feeling oddly calm. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly with interested parties, legal teams, and observers drawn by the media coverage. Daphne sat in the front row with a court advocate, her 7-year-old face serious but not frightened. She caught Sela's eye and gave a small wave that strengthened her resolve. Judge Morrison took his seat with the gravity of someone who understood that his decision would shape a child's entire future. This is the matter of Hargrave versus Hargrave, custody determination for minor child Daphne. Dr. Montrese, you may present your evaluation. Sela rose and moved to the witness stand, hyper-aware that every word would be scrutinized for evidence of bias. The courtroom fell silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's fingers. Your Honor, after comprehensive evaluation of both parents and their living environments, I recommend that primary custody of Daphne Hargrave be awarded to her father, Maxwell Hargrave. The courtroom erupted in controlled chaos, whispered conversations, shifting papers, Rosalind's sharp intake of breath. Cedric's expression darkened with dangerous disappointment. Dr. Montrese, Judge Morrison continued, given the concerns raised about your objectivity, please explain the basis for your recommendation. Your Honor, my evaluation considered multiple factors: emotional stability, parental bonding, living environment, financial security, and most importantly, which parent consistently prioritizes Daphne's needs over their own convenience. Sela's voice grew stronger, with conviction. Maxwell Hargrave has created a stable, nurturing environment where his daughter can develop emotionally and intellectually. He demonstrates consistent parental judgment, protective instincts, and genuine investment in her daily welfare. She paused, consulting notes that represented weeks of careful observation. In contrast, Rosalind Hargrave's motivation for custody appears primarily financial. Her trust fund conditions require primary custody to maintain certain benefits. Additionally, her living situation includes a male companion who views Daphne as an inconvenience rather than family member. Rosalind's attorney jumped up with practiced indignation. Objection, Your Honor. Dr. Montrese is making assumptions. Based on direct observation and professional assessment, Sela interrupted calmly. During my evaluation, Mr. Richard Blackstone, who is both Mrs. Hargrave's attorney and romantic partner, referred to Daphne as baggage from previous relationship and suggested that full custody would be temporary arrangement until boarding school becomes option. The courtroom fell silent at this revelation. Sela looked directly at Cedric, meeting his cold gaze with steady determination. However, I must also address concerns about Maxwell Hargrave's extended family. His uncle, Cedric Hargrave, represents legitimate safety concern due to alleged criminal associations and demonstrated willingness to use intimidation tactics. Cedric's face went rigid with controlled fury, but Salah continued without flinching. That said, Maxwell Hargrave has consistently chosen his daughter's welfare over family loyalty. He's distanced himself from questionable family influences, built legitimate business using his own resources, and demonstrated that protecting Daphne comes before any other consideration. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Dr. Montrice, given your personal history with the father, how can you assure this court that your recommendation is based on professional assessment rather than personal bias? The question everyone had been waiting for. Selah took a breath and made her choice. Your Honor, 8 years ago Maxwell Hargrave left me at our wedding altar without explanation. For years I believed this meant I was unworthy of love, commitment, or even basic courtesy. That pain shaped my professional focus on protecting children from adult failures. The courtroom was absolutely silent now, every person hanging on her words. Recently I learned that Maxwell's abandonment was actually protection. His family had threatened my safety if our marriage proceeded. He chose my physical well-being over our relationship, believing this was noble sacrifice. I now understand it was actually cowardice, making decisions for me instead of trusting me to face danger alongside him. Maxwell's face showed surprise at her public revelation, followed by something that might have been hope. However, that experience gives me unique insight into Maxwell's character. He will sacrifice everything he values most to protect people he loves, even when that protection seems cruel to everyone else. That same instinct makes him an exceptional father. He consistently chooses Daphne's needs over his own desires, her safety over his convenience, her emotional security over family pressure. Selah looked directly at Judge Morrison, staking everything on this moment. My recommendation is based on 20 years of professional experience evaluating families, not 8 years of personal history with one man. Maxwell Hargrave is the parent who will put Daphne first every day for the rest of her childhood. That's what matters, nothing else. Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment before consulting his notes. Dr. Montrice, thank you for your candor about both professional assessment and personal circumstances. Your integrity in addressing potential conflicts while maintaining focus on the child's welfare is noted. He turned to address the full courtroom. In the matter of custody for Daphne Hargrave, this court finds that her best interests are served by awarding primary custody to her father, Maxwell Hargrave, with supervised visitation rights to her mother. Additionally, this court orders that Cedric Hargrave have no unsupervised contact with the minor child, given concerns about intimidation tactics and questionable associations. The gavel came down with finality that changed everything. Maxwell's shoulders sagged with relief, while Rosalind's face went white with shock. Cedric rose from his seat with a dangerous expression, but courthouse security moved to intercept him before he could approach anyone. As the courtroom cleared, Selah found herself alone with Maxwell near the witness stand. 8 years of separation, weeks of professional tension, and days of public scrutiny had led to this moment of quiet victory. You saved her, Maxwell said quietly. You saved my daughter, knowing it might cost you everything. We saved her, Selah corrected. You by becoming the father she needed, me by refusing to let intimidation tactics succeed. Neither of us could have done it alone. Maxwell stepped closer, close enough that she could see the emotions flickering in his dark eyes, gratitude, regret, and something deeper that made her pulse accelerate despite professional settings. Selah, what happens now? The question hung between them like a bridge across 8 years of separation. They were no longer the young couple who'd planned forever together, but they were also no longer strangers, connected only by painful history. Now Daphne gets the stable childhood she deserves. You get to be her father without family interference. I get to face whatever professional consequences come from choosing courage over comfort. She paused, studying his face. Everything else? We figure out as we go. Are you willing to figure it out together? The question she'd been afraid to consider, directly. Maxwell was offering partnership instead of protection, trust instead of isolated decision-making, the chance to face whatever came next as a team rather than individuals, nursing old wounds. I think, Sela said carefully, that some risks are worth taking when you're not taking them alone. Maxwell's smile was soft with possibility. Then maybe it's time we both learn to be brave enough for the truth. 6 months later. 6 months later, Sela stood in the same courthouse where her career had nearly ended, watching Maxwell and Daphne navigate the busy hallway after a routine check-in with family services. The little girl had flourished in her father's stable care, her artwork now showing confident figures and bright colors instead of the anxious sketches from her evaluation period. "Dr. Sela!" Daphne ran toward her with enthusiasm that only children could muster, her backpack bouncing as she moved. "Look what I drew!" The picture showed 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow, a tall man, a smaller girl, and a woman with kind eyes and flowing hair. But this time, instead of being separate figures, they were connected by holding hands and shared smiles. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "What's it called?" "My Real Family," Daphne announced proudly. "The ones who choose to love each other every day, even when it's hard." Maxwell approached with an expression of warmth and contentment that had replaced the controlled tension she remembered from their evaluation sessions. "Ready for ice cream?" "I promised someone a celebration cone for good behavior during today's appointment." As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Sela reflected on the unexpected ways love could manifest. Maxwell had learned that true protection meant standing with someone against threats rather than making decisions for them. She had learned that courage sometimes required risking everything you'd built to fight for what was right. Most importantly, they had both learned that family wasn't just about blood relations or legal documents. It was about people who chose to show up for each other, day after day, through complications and challenges and ordinary moments that created extraordinary bonds. Outside, autumn sunlight filtered through changing leaves as they walked toward Maxwell's car. Daphne chattered about school projects and friend dramas with the security of a child who knew the adults in her life could handle whatever problems arose. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to trust you with the truth 8 years ago," Maxwell said quietly as Daphne climbed into her car seat. "We would have figured it out together then, the same way we're figuring it out now," Sela replied. "The timing was different, but the outcome is what matters. We're all where we need to be." Maxwell nodded, something peaceful in his expression. "Daphne asked me yesterday if you were going to be her stepmom. I told her that adults sometimes take longer to figure out what children see clearly, that love means choosing each other every day, not just in the easy moments." Sela smiled, watching the little girl organize her art supplies with the same precision her father brought to everything important in his life. "What did she say to that?" "She said she already considers you family, and that grown-ups worry too much about labels instead of just being happy." Maxwell's voice carried amusement and respect for his daughter's wisdom. Sometimes 7-year-olds understand love better than adults do. The past 6 months had brought challenges neither of them had anticipated. Sela faced an ethics review that ultimately cleared her of wrongdoing, but left her professional reputation somewhat bruised. Maxwell dealt with ongoing legal battles as Cedric's criminal enterprise finally faced federal prosecution. Through it all, they'd chosen to face difficulties together rather than separately. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, built on mutual respect and hard-won trust rather than the passionate intensity of their youth. They'd learned to communicate about fears and concerns instead of making assumptions about what the other person needed. Most importantly, they'd learned that love wasn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It was about showing up consistently, even when things got complicated. "There's something I want to show you," Maxwell said as they reached his car. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, but before Sela could react, he handed it to Daphne instead. "Daphne has something to ask you," he said with a smile. The little girl took the box with the solemnity of someone entrusted with an important mission. She looked up at Sela with her father's dark eyes, but her expression was entirely her own, hopeful, determined, and impossibly wise. "Dr. Sela," Daphne began, her voice carrying the careful pronunciation of rehearsed words. Daddy says that families are made by people who choose to love each other every day. He says you've been choosing to love us for a long time now, even when it was scary and hard. Sela felt her eyes fill with tears as she realized what was happening. So we want to ask if you'll choose to be our family forever, Daphne continued, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. Will you marry Daddy so we can all be together always? The proposal was everything their first attempt hadn't been: honest, inclusive, rooted in reality rather than fantasy. This time, there were no secrets, no hidden threats, no fear of what tomorrow might bring. There was only truth, courage, and the kind of love that grew stronger through adversity rather than weaker. Yes, Sela whispered, then louder, yes, I'll marry both of you. Daphne's squeal of delight attracted attention from other courthouse visitors, but none of them cared. Maxwell slipped the ring onto Sela's finger while his daughter danced around them with pure joy. This time, Maxwell said softly, we do it right. No secrets, no running away, no protecting each other from the truth. Just us, facing whatever comes, together. Together, Sela agreed, looking at her small, unconventional family. A man who'd learned that love meant partnership rather than protection, a child who understood family better than most adults, and herself, a woman who'd discovered that courage meant fighting for love rather than running from it. As they drove away from the courthouse, Daphne chattering excitedly about wedding plans from the back seat, Sela realized that some stories did get second chances. Not because time erased the past, but because people could grow brave enough to write better endings. The first wedding had been about perfect moments and fairy tale promises. This one would be about choosing each other daily, through imperfect moments and real-life challenges. It would be about building something lasting through truth, trust, and the kind of love that got stronger every time it was tested. Are you happy, Dr. Sela? Daphne asked from the back seat, using the formal title she'd never quite abandoned despite their growing closeness. Sela looked at Maxwell's profile as he drove, then turned to smile at the little girl who'd taught them both about the courage required for real love. I'm very happy, sweetheart. We're going to have a beautiful life together. I know, Daphne replied with the confidence of a child who'd helped orchestrate her own happy ending. I drew it lots of times. It always turned out perfect. Sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one at all. Maxwell and Sela learned that protecting love means fighting for it, not running from it. Have you ever had to risk everything for love? What would you have done in their situation? Share your thoughts below. Hit that like button if their story touched your heart, and subscribe for more stories about finding courage in love. Tomorrow, we'll explore another story of unexpected second chances and the courage to love again. Until then, remember, some love is worth every risk.